This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. The holidays are over, the decorations are down, and suddenly everything feels a little empty. It's normal to feel the winter blues after the holiday excitement. January, February, and March are by far my least favorite months of the year. It's cold and dark, and I have to get some extra vitamin D on board. I also need to keep my regular scheduled appointments with my therapist. So if you're feeling that post-holiday funk, I definitely suggest you checking out BetterHelp because maybe it's time to talk. You might also be one of those people like me who makes New Year's resolutions and you get super motivated. So maybe you need someone behind you to hold you accountable and come up with a plan to meet your goals. BetterHelp is super convenient, totally online. You have a therapist right at your fingertips whenever you need them. So head over to betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wifeofcrime1 for 10% off your first month.
More Chumba Casino fan mail. Love this. It says, Dear Ryan, I love Chumba Casino. They're so much fun. I love the wild ride from the social slots to the Slingo to jackpots quicker than a 6-time real spin. Everybody's finding their fun at Chumba Casino. Why don't you find out for yourself? Head to ChumbaCasino.com and enjoy hundreds of casino-style games for free with your welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
So Russ, today I'm going to tell you the story of 5 murders. And all 5 of these murders happened within miles of each other. To this day, these murders are still cold cases. But everyone who lives in the area, they don't believe that they're cold at all. They believe they know exactly who committed these crimes. These are the cases of the Lewis Clark Valley murders.
Wife of Crime with another episode. I'm Russ. I'm here with Jess. She's gonna tell me stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you a story. Actually, this story is really interesting. I'm super excited to talk about it. I watched a documentary that got me super into it last week.
That's how 50% of your conversations start. So I was watching this documentary, so I was listening to this podcast.
It's true. If anyone knows me, all my friends will tell you that 90% of the things that come out of my mouth start with, I was watching a documentary or listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
Well, before we get into it, we have some shout outs. We're getting so many shares lately. I'm really excited. And we're getting a lot of 5-star reviews. And I'm super happy about it. And it's making me feel like we're doing something right.
Yeah, keep it up.
So
thanks for those 5 stars. Don't do less than that ever. If you think about it, though, just don't rate.
True. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. Or you can email me and tell me.
No, stop saying that.
So our shout outs for people who shared us on Instagram are Marisol, Krista, Shane, Schmitty, Shelly, a lot of S's, Lily, and Anna. So thank you so much for sharing us on Instagram.
There are also people that share it and it doesn't pop up on the Instagram. We don't know why. Some people told me that, but thanks for sharing anyway. If we forgot you, didn't mean it.
Yeah, we
don't really see it. We don't see all of them. I don't know why.
Yeah, some of them don't always pop up. It's really weird. But we really appreciate you telling your friends and sharing. And I wanted to say one more thing. Oh yeah, Sarah, a girl named Sarah, she shared us on her Instagram because she rates and talks about podcasts on her Instagram. She also gave us a 5-star review. So thank you so much, Sarah, for doing that. Thanks for telling everybody on your Instagram about us. We're super excited.
What's her Instagram so people could check it out?
I don't have it in front of me.
Damn.
You're putting me on the spot.
She gave us a 5-star and rated us. And she obviously has great taste in podcasts because she recommended us.
Well, now I have to look it up because
people.
I didn't have it in front of me. I just remember her name is Sarah.
So check out her gram because she recommended us, and that means she has good taste.
That's true. Her Instagram is called Sarah's Sick Obsession.
So
definitely check her out. She talks about true crime podcasts. She has an obsession with true crime, pretty much everyone listening.
Yeah, most people listening.
So she talks about different podcasts on her Instagram and different episodes of different podcasts that she likes, and it's really cool. And she put us up there as a new true crime couple that she likes. So that's exciting. So thank you everyone so much. We have another exciting announcement. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, we got stuff.
We have some merch available for people to purchase.
Got some hoodies, some t-shirts, some pillows.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Mugs.
We designed them ourselves. So I have the link in the Instagram, in our Instagram bio. There's a link to our merch store. And you can also go to wifeofcrime.com. I made a little section that says merch at
What's
the top.
our Instagram?
Our Instagram is Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Just in case this is someone's first episode listening.
Oh, true. And then on our website, wifeofcrime.com, I have a section for merch, and you can click on that and go to the link, and it'll take you to our merch store, and you can buy some cool stuff.
And if you buy something, take a picture and tag us on Instagram. We'll share it. It'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely do that. That would be exciting. All right, so that's it. That's all of our stuff that we do in the beginning before we get into our story. So like I said earlier, I watched a documentary last week. It was on Hulu, but it originally aired on the ID channel, and it's called Cold Valley. And I was just so into this story. I thought it was so interesting because it is pretty much 5 murders. 3 of them are cold cases, and there is one guy that everyone thinks did at least 4 of the murders. And he's still just out living his life because there's a mound of circumstantial evidence, but no physical evidence to connect him to the crime. But So many people in this area think he did it. Law enforcement think he did it. And it's just crazy.
They have no proof?
They don't have any physical evidence. They just have a bunch of circumstantial evidence. So it kind of reminds me of the Black Dahlia case that we did before, and the case with Alejandro Henriquez, remember, from the Bronx?
Oh, yeah, the fat dude, and that was super annoying.
Yeah. So this story reminds me of that because it's like a bunch of circumstantial evidence,
But what's crazy is some people are in jail for circumstantial evidence, but I guess this guy isn't.
Yeah, and they've let him... he's been free this whole time, and he's just living his life. So I'm going to tell you all about the crimes that occurred and tell you about the area they occurred in. And then I'm going to tell you about this person of interest and why he's linked to all these crimes.
And after I hear the story, I'll let you know whether he's guilty or not. I'll profile him. We'll do that.
You'll give your opinion.
No, I'll give you the factual profiled opinion.
Okay. All right. So... this is going to be called the Lewis Clark Valley Murders. And Lewis Clark Valley, it's a connection pretty much of 3 towns: Lewiston, Idaho, Clarkston, Washington, and Asotin, Washington. So there are these 2 rivers, the Snake River and the Clearwater River. And where these rivers meet is called the Lewis Clark Valley. And it's a bunch of small towns, very rural area. One of the towns, Asotin, which is in Washington, only has 1,100 people. They have 1 grocery store, 1 stoplight.
Damn.
Very small. Not like what we're used to here in New York City.
No.
At all. So there are 2 women involved in this. There is a detective named Jackie Nichols and a family member of one of the victims named Gloria Bobberts. And they are literally determined to solve these cold cases. Gloria, who is...
And they're related to the victims?
Gloria is related to the victim.
And the other one just wants to solve it?
Is a detective, yeah.
So she's like a true crime fiend.
She's an actual detective for the sheriff's department.
Oh, she's real?
Yeah, she's the detective.
Oh.
And one of the cold cases is on her caseload. So her and Gloria are determined to solve these cold cases. And this one person of interest, they are determined to find a way to link him to these crimes. So between the years 1979 and 1982, there were 5 murders that occurred in the Lewis Clark Valley. All 5 deaths are in some way or another connected to this one man. And these cases are all still cold. So I'm going to tell you about the first case. Her name was Christina White. On April 28th, 1979, Christina, who was only 12 years old...
Another kid missing. I hate those.
I know. Her mom and her 6-year-old sister and Christina, they went to the Asotin County Fair. They spent a few hours at the fair, and then Christina was going to ride her bike to her friend's house and meet up with her friend because her friend was riding a horse that was going to be in the fair later that day. So
wait, she was riding a horse in the street like a car?
No. She was going to ride a horse in the fair, like for a show in the fair.
Okay.
So Christina was going to leave her mom, ride her bike to her friend's house, and then her and her friend were going to come back and hang out at the fair. So she rode off to her friend's house, and her mom got in a car with a neighbor and drove home. Her mom rode by the friend's house in the car and saw Christina on the front porch. So she knew that she got to the friend's house. They waved at each other, and this was the last time that her mother would ever see her alive. So a couple, like maybe 10, 15 minutes later, Christina calls her mom and says that she's feeling really sick and really hot because Christina was really prone to getting heat exhaustion. And this was the hottest day of the year so far. So her riding her bike around outside, it made her not feel really good. So her mom said, okay, get a wet cloth, like a wet rag, put it on the back of your neck, sit in the shade for a few minutes or sit inside for a few minutes and cool off, and then meet me on the corner like a block away.
Is that what you're supposed to do if you're getting heat exhaustion?
Well, you put a cold compress on, yeah.
I don't get heat exhaustion because I don't like to, but I was curious.
Yeah, you would put a cold compress on like the back of your neck or the top of your head or something to, because your head or your feet, both of those areas, like you expel heat from that.
Yeah.
So anyway, she told her to put a cold compress on the back of her neck, and then, in a little bit, meet her down the block on the corner of one of the blocks near her house, and she would help her walk home. Well, Christina never showed up, and she was never seen again.
She didn't show up and walk in to the spot where she was to where she was going? Wait. I don't know how I'm saying this.
Yeah, I don't even know what you're saying. She didn't show up to meet her mom. Her mom said, I'll meet you a block away.
So maybe where she was walking that block is what we're saying. Like I'm saying, they got her in between then?
That's a theory, yeah. So it was literally a block away from where she was at the time. And from hanging up the phone saying, okay, to not meeting her on that corner, her mom never saw her again.
Whenever someone goes missing in such a small little space, they're like, oh, she was going from here to here. I feel like someone was watching and waiting for them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when I tell you later what the theory is, it seems pretty plausible that someone who was around knew what was going on and took her. So by that evening, family and police were searching everywhere for this missing girl. Since this is such a small town and everyone knows one another, it's only 1,100 people that live in this town. Her father thought it might be someone traveling with the fair because the fair, it was a traveling fair.
Scooped up and took her with the fair.
So he and his son, her older brother, who was 18, they went down to the fairgrounds and they searched all through the fair. They were going inside people's trailers.
Hell yeah.
They were knocking on doors, asking questions. The police wouldn't even do it, but the dad was determined. He was like, no, I want to make sure.
Those police were herbs. You got to do that.
The other thing that her dad did was he followed the fair to the next cities that it went to the next 3 days to see if anything popped up or anything suspicious happened. So he was like really on top of it because he was convinced that it was someone who was from this fair because they're new in town. And, so another thing her dad did was he had a friend who had a helicopter company. So he chartered one of this guy's helicopters and took it up in the air, and they searched the entire Lewis Clark Valley looking for her bike or her or any signs of anything suspicious from the helicopter. And
that's good when you take it in your own hands. You don't just leave it up to the police, because some police are just dudes collecting paychecks. They don't care.
Yeah, well,
no one cares like you, like your family.
Like your own, yeah, it's your own child, exactly. So, they didn't find anything, like literally nothing. Her bike and her were gone, and there was no sign of her. About a month later, police get a phone call from a man who found a bunch of papers scattered all over his property. And these papers were Christina White's school papers, like her graded school papers. She had had them in her book bag the day she went missing. Now, the papers were completely untouched by any elements. So there was no like dirt, rain, they didn't have water damage, nothing. So they had probably just been placed there or scattered there that day when the guy found them on his property.
I doubt someone placed them. They blow around and stuff.
Yeah, but they hadn't been outside for, like, there was no sign of them being outside for any length of time. There was no sun damage to the paper. I mean, they're paper. If it rains, they're ruined. There was no rain damage, sun damage, nothing. So they think that they were put there the day that they were found. And some people believe that it was a way to taunt the law enforcement.
How many days after the disappearance did the papers pop up?
A matter of, I think it was just a few days.
Okay.
Yeah. Not long. So that was our first case. That's the first cold case. That's Christina, what's her name? Christina White, and she's been missing since 1979. No sign of her or her bike since. And It's never been solved. Okay? 2 years later, on June 26, 1981, a 22-year-old girl named Kristen David vanished while riding her bike. So Kristen was a University of Idaho student, and she was like a big bike enthusiast, kind of like you. You love bikes.
I like riding bikes.
Yeah, you're a big mountain biker, and you have a street bike. She had a street bike that she loved, and she had just gotten it freshly painted and tuned up. So she really wanted to ride her bike, a long distance. She
was feeling fresh. People that like bikes, like you feel cool on your nice new shiny bike.
Yeah, so she really wanted to ride a really long distance. And there was a 10-mile stretch of highway from a place called Moscow to her hometown of Lewiston. And she's ridden this stretch of highway many times, but it's 10 miles and it's all downhill. So it's probably really fun for people who like to ride bikes to just go downhill and you coast down on the highway.
Until you got to go home and ride up the damn hill.
Yeah, yeah, probably. So she told her mom the night before that she was planning to leave early in the morning and that she would, meet them at their house because her parents lived in Lewiston. So she was traveling this 10-mile stretch of highway and she would be there in like the early afternoon. But Kristen never showed up. And she was supposed to go to work that night. She never showed up for her shift at work. And this was just not like her to do no-call, no-shows. So her family was, right away, they knew something was wrong. Of course, since she's 22 years old, police...
They assumed she ran away.
She left or went off somewhere. So they didn't start looking for her for like 48 hours. But her family knew that something wasn't right, and they started looking for her right away.
And according to the TV show, you have the first 48 is when you could catch the people.
Yeah, the first 48 is the prime time of being able to solve a crime.
Yeah, if you don't get the evidence, they say, in that time, then it's less likely to be solved.
I know, and that's really sad, right? That they just assumed this girl would run away, even though her family is saying, no, that's not like her, we know her. I mean, that's her family. They know her better than anyone, but...
What else do they have to do in such a small town of 1,000 people? There's probably nothing else going on. Why are people so lazy?
I don't know. It's very annoying. But her parents started searching for her, and so did family, friends, and neighbors. And she was not seen alive after this. She was last spotted on the hill before the road finally descends into Lewiston. There's this big hill, and she was last spotted on that hill. But
see, she was fit. She probably could have ran, but if you're riding your bike, someone could like easily all you got to do is like bump you. And you could like fall off your bike or something.
Well, interestingly, one witness came forward a few days later and said that he saw a woman with a bike and blonde hair, which she had blonde hair, lying on the ground right next to a van, a brown van with Oregon license plates. He said that there was a man who looked to be 25 to 35 years old, and he was coming out of the van and walking back towards the woman who was laying on the ground.
So he might have bumped her with the car.
So the man who witnessed this, he didn't stop because he assumed that the guy in the van was stopping to help the woman and he had somewhere to be. So he didn't stop. He didn't call police until the story came out a few days later, and then he contacted police and told police what he saw.
See, I probably wouldn't stop either. And then I might have did the same thing. Like, I'm just not going to call the police for everything. Then when someone's missing, then maybe it'll ring a bell. Like, oh, wait, that was that girl laying down that fell. And also, like, I'm not stopping either. Because say, for instance, that guy was a killer. Now you stop and you go to, hey, what are you doing? And now you and the girl are both in the van dead.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see, like, if the guy thought, oh, that person's stopping to help her. And he just assumed the guy was just going to help her out and she would get up and ride off, whatever. I kind of see that. But
if she's on the ground, a lot of people would help, but I kind of just mind my business.
I know. So anyway, that's the last time anyone saw Kristen David alive. And since he thought that he pulled over to help, he kind of remembered a description, but he didn't concentrate too hard on the guy. He
was driving.
Yeah, he just said, I saw a guy, he had dark hair, a dark beard, and glasses, and he was 25 to 35 years old, which could have been like
know what I'm thinking of?
People. What?
So I feel like the detectives were asking for like a description, and his description was so vague, it makes me think of Mad TV, where he would go, what does he look like? He looking like a man.
Exactly.
Like, no, wait. But what does he really look like? Hold on, let me tell you. He looking like a man. If you don't know that, go check out Looking Like a Man on YouTube. I'm not crazy.
No, but it's true. Like, he didn't really pay much attention, so it wasn't the best description. But that's the last person who saw Kristen David alive. So this investigation got really big because since she was riding down this 10-mile stretch of highway, she passed through a bunch of jurisdictions and 2 states, because Idaho and Washington are right next to each other, and the Lewis-Clark Valley, it pretty much joins Idaho and Washington. So since she was riding through 2 states and like multiple jurisdictions, a bunch of different jurisdictions got involved, and so did the FBI.
That's good. The more people on the case, the better.
Yeah, so there was a lot of people on this case really trying to find her. But unfortunately, on July 4th, 1981, 8 days after Kristen went missing, a fisherman was fishing in the Snake River when he saw a black plastic bag. It washed up against the rocks. So he reached down and grabbed it. When he opened it up, he was horrified to find pieces of human body wrapped in newspaper in the plastic bag.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If you were fishing, because I put myself in these people's shoes. If I was fishing or you was fishing and a black bag just like kind of washed up against the rock, I wouldn't even go towards it.
You wouldn't pick it up?
I'm not nosy. I'm like, oh, man, this water's dirty. Look at that litter in there.
I don't know. Well, he picked it up and it must have been kind of heavy, so he decided to open it and see what was inside. I'm sure he regretted that. But I mean, it's like you regret it, but then at the same time, like, they thought maybe we could have some physical evidence to find the killer. Anyway, so he called police right away. Police showed up and they ended up finding 6 trash bags altogether with the dismembered body of Kristen David wrapped in newspaper.
I put different parts in every bag.
Different bag.
That's a lot of work.
And it was just devastating. When I watched the interview with her dad on the documentary that I watched, it was so sad. Like, even to this day, this was 30 something years ago, and even to this day it's hard for him to even talk about. I mean, I can't even
never
imagine.
Get over that. If a loved one passes away, you could be 30 years later, it doesn't matter, you still miss them.
But he passed away like that.
Yeah, so it's even worse.
Butchered.
Like, so it's more to him than like a normal thing.
I know, it's crazy.
Because he probably feels like as a dad, you feel like you're supposed to protect your family.
Exactly. Like, that's why he was so devastated, but it didn't just devastate her family. It was so horrifying for the entire community, because just 2 years before that, this little girl, Christina White, goes missing, disappears. No one ever saw her again. And now this girl goes missing, who's 22 years old, has her whole life ahead of her, and she's found, dismembered in a bunch of trash bags, thrown away like trash into the river. People in the community were so scared because up until this point, nothing like that had ever happened before.
So now they know, if they think it's the same person that did this, it's not someone from the carnival. Now it's someone that lives in your town of 1,000 people. Like, the dude, you've seen him, or woman, but it's usually a dude doing sick shit.
Yeah, it's definitely, they decided it probably was someone local. Okay, so now there's another one. So another year after the Kristen David murder was the murder of 3 people: Christina Nelson, Brandy Miller, and
In 1 year?
Stephen Pearsall. In one night.
Oh, shit.
Okay. So on Sunday, September 12th, 1982, 2 stepsisters, Christina Nelson and Brandy Miller, go missing. These 2 were in their early 20s. They lived in separate apartments, but they were very close to each other, so they used to spend the night at each other's apartment all the time.
How old were they?
In their early 20s, like 20, 21.
Okay.
They were very young, like early 20s. I think they were still in college.
Okay.
So they used to spend the night in each other's apartments all the time, but they didn't live together. They were best friends and stepsisters. So Christina left a note for her boyfriend on her front door because her boyfriend was going to come over that night. And she left a note for him that said, "Hey, we're going out to the grocery store and to do some laundry, but stay in my apartment and wait for me. We'll be back soon." Okay. So her boyfriend stayed in the apartment and waited, but the girls never came back.
Women all got to carry pepper spray. It's crazy.
It's really crazy.
Yeah, because when people get killed, like from these like serial killers, I feel like it's more women than anything.
I know. So the 2 girls were going to pick up groceries at Safeway and then wash some towels at a laundromat nearby. But they would never be seen alive again.
This is why I don't do laundry. It's dangerous. You could.
We have laundry in our complex. You just don't do laundry because you don't want to.
Yeah, but what if someone gets me?
Shut up. So these 2 girls were involved in activities at a place called the Civic Theater. And this night, when these 3 people get murdered, this is called the Civic Theater 3. That's what they call it. So the Civic Theater was a place that had a theater troupe, and they would do like live shows, musicals. They did like, productions of different plays and things like that. And these 2 girls were involved, as well as a guy named Stephen Pearsall. So it's believed that at some point in the night, the girls stopped by the theater. After all the investigations that the police did, they've determined that the girls had to have stopped by the Civic Theater that night.
Did anyone see them there?
No, but I'll tell you later why they believe this.
Okay.
So the same night, like I said, a man named Stephen Pearsall went to the theater as well. His girlfriend dropped him off there to do laundry. Steve was one of the janitors there, so he had a key to the building. And he was also part of the theater troupe that performed. He did a lot of set work. He was an artist, so he would paint a lot of the sets and do lighting. So he did a lot of the stage hand work. Plus, he was a janitor, so he had a key to the building, like I said.
So he did everything there. He was just
he was a big part of it.
If anything needed to be done, he was the guy.
Yeah. So he often he would do laundry there because it was a free laundry facility for him. He would just go there, throw his laundry in the washer, and then practice his clarinet because he also was a clarinet player. So he would either practice his clarinet or he would paint sets that they were going to use for upcoming shows.
Sounds like someone was hiding behind the fabric softener and got him.
Well, you're so weird. No.
You gotta hide behind something.
So Steve Pearsall was last seen entering the Civic Theater at midnight by his girlfriend and by a police officer that was patrolling the area. But he was never seen leaving the theater, and he was never seen again to this day.
So he's still in the theater?
They don't know where he is. He's never been seen again since then.
Maybe he saw the dude trying to get the girls, and then the dude got him.
That's what some people think. But since all 3 of them knew each other and disappeared on the same night, a lot of theories started to circulate. And the first theory was that Stephen Pearsall was the number 1 suspect.
Oh, because he disappeared, so maybe they thought he took the girls.
Yes. So they assumed that this man, since he was gone, never seen again, and the girls were never seen again, first they assumed maybe they all ran away together. Then 2 years later, in 1984, a teenager was out collecting cans to cash in for some money. Okay. And he was on the side of a highway
Respect
doing
the hustle.
this. And a tree branch knocked his hat off of his head, and it was a little windy, so his hat rolled really far down a hill, and he chased it all the way down this hill. Well, when he got to the bottom of the hill, he saw what he thought was a deer skull, but when he got closer, he discovered that it was the decomposed remains of both girls, Christina and Brandy.
Not the dude?
No. So Steve Pearsall's body has never been found to this day. So when this all happened in the beginning, they painted Steve as the number one suspect, and they put it in the newspapers right away.
What did Steve's family say?
Steve's family was livid because they said, of course, I mean,
he's missing too, motherfucker.
he's missing, and
find him. Don't blame him.
yeah, they were like, he would never hurt a fly. He would never do anything like that. Plus, interestingly enough,
Well, everyone always says, oh, he was quiet guy, couldn't have been him. Like when they say, oh, the serial killer, oh, did you know you live next to the serial killer? No, he was such a nice guy. He even helped me with the trash. Like, so I don't like that someone would never do something. I don't like that.
I understand, but listen, this is interesting. So he left his car, his wallet, his keys, cash in his apartment, uncashed paychecks. I mean, would you leave all of those things if you were leaving town?
Nah, I'm all about my money.
So
that's my money.
So that's another thing that his family brought up is if he did do this and he left town, you think he wouldn't take money or his car or his wallet? You think he would just not take anything with him?
Why did he have uncashed paychecks?
Because maybe he just hadn't gone to the bank yet and cashed them.
All right, so then he definitely didn't run away because he was too lazy to go cash his checks. So he's definitely didn't run away. He's definitely dead. Officially profiled, stamp it, Russ the Profiler's seal of approval.
So he was the number one suspect, like I said, for a while. But after the investigators really started looking into this crime, they couldn't concretely rule Steve out because his body to this day has still never been found. But in law enforcement's minds, they ruled him out as a suspect. And the reason they unofficially ruled him out is because they discovered that there was someone else in the Civic Theater that night. So this, quote, person of interest is the person that I spoke about in the beginning. He was in the Civic Theater that night, and he ended up talking with investigators about this. He said that he was hanging out with Steve in the Civic Theater around 9 p.m. and then Steve leaves and goes to a party with his girlfriend. But the guy, this person of interest, he stayed in the theater to work on set work and electric stuff.
Did he work there?
Yes, he was also part of the Civic Theater, so he knew all three of them. He knew Brandy, Christina, and Steve. So this man tells investigators that he was there that night and that Steve hung out with him. They worked on a set, and then Steve left to go to a party. And this guy went upstairs to do some electrical work in the attic and fell through one of the rafters and hurt his leg. Then he says that he went down to the green room and fell asleep on the couch and didn't wake up until 4 a.m. His wife told investigators that he's never stayed out all night without contacting her, but this is the only night that he did that. So he says that he woke up at 4 a.m., called his wife, and said, hey, I fell asleep on the couch. I'm going to be on my way home.
Did they ask Steve's girlfriend?
Well, Steve's girlfriend didn't have anything to do with him.
Well, they said no, because he said Steve left to go to a party with his girlfriend.
Yes, he really did go to a party with his girlfriend.
Oh.
His girlfriend brought him back at midnight to do laundry after the party that they went to. So this man and Steve were hanging out, doing work on the set until 9 p.m.
Now I got it.
Then Steve left, goes to a party. Then his girlfriend brings him back to the theater so he can do his laundry. This man claims that he was asleep on the couch in the green room and never heard anybody come back in the theater. But the green room is the entrance that Steve had to walk through, and that the girlfriend and the cop doing patrol saw Steve walk through. So there's no way that this guy could stay asleep on the couch and Steve could walk in the building and them not see each other. So that's one weird thing that happened when they were trying to investigate this crime. So this man, turns out, while they were investigating this crime and talking to him about this, investigators found out that he actually has been involved in the Christina White case as well.
Is that the girl with the bike?
The girl with the bike, years before. No, not the girl with the bike.
That's a little girl.
The little girl.
Oh, the 12-year-old, the first one.
So while they were questioning him for the crime at the Civic Theater, it turns out that then he starts talking about Christina White and the Christina White case.
He randomly brings it up?
No, it just comes out through questions. I don't remember. I don't know exactly how it came out, but it turns out that he was the last person to see Christina White alive, because he was Christina White's best friend, the girls whose house she went over. It was her mom's boyfriend, and he was there.
Okay. Still circumstantial. I'm not fully convinced yet.
So everyone in the Lewis Clark Valley knows his name, and they consider him the Lewis Clark Valley serial killer. They think that he did these crimes.
Just because of that stuff?
Because he was at the Civic Theater the night the three of them are killed.
Yep.
He was the last person to see Christina White alive. And he has a couple other things in his past that he's done, some very odd behavior, and another murder that he was very closely tied to. And I'm sorry, but like, if you're tied, okay, you have a weird involvement or weird link to one murder, that sucks. 2 murders, that's like a crazy coincidence, and that's terrible. 3, 4, 5, 6 murders, like that's just too much. No one, unless you've been involved in those murders, you're not going to be linked to that many random
You said 6?
murders. Yes.
Well, maybe 6. Yeah, there's a little coinky dink going on.
More than a coinky dink.
You repeated coinky dink.
Because it's more than a coincidence. So, okay. So his name, should I say his name on the podcast? I know his name.
Sure. What's his name?
His name is Lance Jeffrey Voss. And he is currently living his life today at 72 years old in North Carolina.
Oh, he got to live his whole life.
As we speak, he's living in North Carolina. And now he goes by the name Jeff Voss. That's his name.
Damn, we even know his alias?
Well, I mean, his name is Lance Jeffrey Voss. He just goes by Jeff Voss now in North Carolina.
He probably tells people a different name because there's all these documentaries.
I don't know. Well, this man is in some way or another connected to 6 deaths, and he has displayed very odd behavior. And like I said, if you're connected to 1 death, it's one thing. 2, it's a little crazy. 3, 4, 5, 6, that's on another level.
Yeah, you might be right.
Now, his connection with murders and death started way before the Lewis Clark Valley cases, okay? He ended up on police radar and became the #1 suspect while he was being interrogated for the Civic Theater 3 case. And like I said, I told you what he said happened that night. But after they questioned him for a while and they started really becoming suspicious of him being involved in this case as well as the Christina White case, he lawyered up. And he refused to cooperate from then on. He didn't take a polygraph. He refused to submit any DNA. He completely lawyered up and stopped answering any questions from law enforcement.
Well, everyone knows that polygraphs are bullshit anyway.
Yeah, but this was back in the 80s, and back
when
then they believed it was real. But also, he didn't submit any of his DNA.
Like I would say, they work on the Maury Show.
He wouldn't submit any of his DNA or cooperate or answer any more questions. So the thing about him that I need to explain is on the day that Christina White, the 12-year-old girl, the day that she went missing, like I said, he was at the girl's house.
Yeah, that was his girlfriend. That was his girlfriend's house.
It was his girlfriend's house. So he was at that house, and he also owned another house down the block that was vacant at the time. So what people believe...
Ooh, he pulled her in there.
Yeah, so at this point, what law enforcement and a lot of people who are involved in these cases believe happened is she called her mom. She said, "I don't feel good." Her mom said, "Okay, put the wet cloth on your neck. Meet me down the block and we'll walk home together." So what they think happened is he probably said to her, "Oh, I can drive you home," because she would have gone with him because she trusts him. That way she doesn't have to ride her bike. So he might have said to her, "Oh, I'll drive you home. Come with me." He gets her in the car, gets her bike in the car, and then somehow takes her to this other house that he owns that's vacant.
And it'd be easy. He could have been like, "Hold on, I got to go inside and grab something real fast."
Exactly. And got her to somehow come in the house.
Yeah.
And murdered her there.
Damn.
And then disposed of her body in some way. There was a lot of theories so at the time when he owned this house, the basement was unfinished. And then he finished the basement and put concrete all over it. So
I think she might be in the concrete.
Investigators believed that. So later on, what they did a couple of years later is they brought in like no holds barred. They tore up all the concrete. They brought in like these heat radar detector things that like you can see. I don't know, all kinds of crazy
Everyone
stuff.
that listens to this is true crime crazy, so they know what you're talking about. They've seen this stuff on documentaries.
So they brought in all their equipment. They brought in the cadaver dogs and everything, and they dug up all the concrete, but she wasn't there, and neither was her bike.
Wow.
So
did he still own the house when they tore it up?
No, he didn't still own it at that time when they tore it up. But that's still a theory that whether he buried her in the basement or not, it is a theory that that's how he got her alone, pretty much, is to take her to this abandoned house that's not too far from the house she was at. Now, when the two girls from the Civic Center, Christina Nelson and Brandy, when their bodies were found by the kid whose hat fell off, remember?
Yep.
When their bodies were found, they had a cord wrapped around them. And at the time, they thought it was rope. But later on, when investigators kept, trying to solve this case and keep going over all of the evidence, they realized that the cord is the same cord from the Civic Center that they use to control the curtains on stage. And that's why they believe
it's probably him.
That the girls either were murdered by somebody who was at the Civic Center, or the girls went to the Civic Center and were murdered after being there because that cord matched the cord on their bodies.
Well, that seems pretty accurate.
Exactly. So this stuff is just too, I don't know. It's too coincidental to be.
I want to hear about
nothing.
the other murders.
So a few years before moving to Asotin, Lance Jeff Voss was arrested in California after trying to break into a mortuary. Okay, and this is real. This really happened. He really got arrested and booked for trespassing. So he was breaking into a mortuary, get this, in the middle of the night with a knife, a flashlight, and a camera.
What's a mortuary?
Where dead people are.
Oh.
Where I
thought that was a morgue.
A mortuary, a morgue, it's the same thing.
All right.
So he was breaking into this mortuary where a teenage girl was laid out, right? And he said that he told the person who caught him that he was trying to see his girlfriend for the last time. He had a knife, a camera, and a flashlight. There was only one body in there, and it was of the teenage girl, and she had just died of a mysterious death, accidental drowning, quote unquote, accidental drowning, that they ruled a suicide because people witnessed her arguing with her boyfriend minutes before that.
People don't drown for suicide.
Well, apparently they believe she jumped.
Mind.
That's not true. People jump off bridges all the time.
But that's different. That's not like drowning. If she didn't jump off something.
Yes, it is.
How'd she end up in the water?
That's
no,
what
I think
they
you die from the impact. It's like hitting concrete.
Okay, but the point is people drown from jumping into bodies of water when they want to commit suicide. They drown themselves.
Oh.
What do you think? How else do you think they would die if they jump in water?
I didn't know you jump. I was thinking like you got to walk out there. Then it's like it's too far and you walk back.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Me neither.
So she apparently died of an accidental drowning, but they ruled it a suicide. But that's just weird. Like, for anybody who would try to break in to where a dead person is.
No one has ever tried to break into a morgue. That doesn't. What are you even doing in there?
With a flashlight, a knife, and a camera.
No, you need a flashlight.
A knife?
Your dad walks around with a knife in his pocket every day. Guys walk around with knives. There's a lot of guys walking around with pocket knives.
Okay, a camera.
And we all have cell phones with cameras on them.
No, this was back in the 80s. No one had a cell phone with a camera.
Polaroid or regular? I
don't know.
It depends. I'm trying to profile this.
I don't know. The point is that he had these things, and this is just weird. Why are you going to break into it in the middle of the night? It's just weird behavior.
Well, what it really sounds like is he was breaking in to take pictures of dead bodies.
Exactly. And a dead body of a girl who he claimed was his girlfriend at the time. So that's one weird thing.
But was that his girlfriend?
I don't know. He claimed it was, but I don't know if it was. Another case that he was recently discovered to be connected to was the death of a girl named Diane Taylor. And this happened in August in 1963. So this happened years before the Lewis Clark Valley.
That was 79, right?
Mm-hmm. So this was August of 1963.
Look at that memory. It's improving little by little.
It is. And this was in Chicago. Okay? Different part of the country. A little girl, 9 years old, named Diane Taylor, lived in Chicago, Illinois, and she was last seen leaving her local YMCA.
How does anyone sleep at night that has children? This is nuts. Like, you're just so overprotective and worried. It's crazy.
I know. I can't imagine what it would feel like to have kids, because I don't have any.
Especially, like, people like you that, like, are so into this stuff. Like, watching murder documentaries 24 hours a day.
I know. I don't know what's going to happen if I ever have a kid. So this little girl, Diane Taylor, she was 9 years old. She was last seen leaving her local YMCA on her roller skates. Her body, she went missing. Her body ended up being discovered in an alleyway 2 days later. She had been beaten, raped, and strangled. But get this. Lance Jeffrey Voss was 15 years old at the time, living in Chicago, Illinois. And he worked at the YMCA that this little girl was last seen leaving. And in the newspaper, they had a crowd of people in the alleyway where her body was discovered. And who's in the front row of the crowd?
Jeff Voss.
Jeff.
I remembered his name. Holy moly.
And this is years that he was 15 years old at this time. So for this crime, this is still a cold case. It's never been solved to this day. They interviewed 14,000 people in Chicago. Police interviewed 14,000 people for the death of this little girl.
There's no DNA, though, that they could test? Like something they found on her? Maybe they didn't take DNA back then?
I don't know, but it's still cold. And they questioned him. At 15 years old, they questioned him, but they let him go because I'm sure in their minds, especially back in the 60s, they didn't think that a 15-year-old would be capable of something like that.
That's so
but a
stupid.
lot of people believe that this was his first murder.
It's possible.
Now, one other really weird thing that happened with this man, this person of interest, is a woman who lives in the Lewis Clark Valley came forward, and she's on the documentary Cold Valley. And she talks about how her and her family, they were out camping for a weekend out in the middle of nowhere, and they were fishing. And he pulls up to her in a pickup truck and asks her for directions. Jeff, yeah. Pulls up in a pickup truck and asks this little girl for directions. And now she's a woman, but she's recalling the story that it happened years ago. And she says that he was lost and asked him for directions, and she's like, oh, I don't know, but my dad's right down there. And he goes, well, why don't you get in the truck with me and I'll drive you to your dad?
Oh, hell
And
no.
she got creeped out, and she was smart enough to be like, no, my dad's just like right there. I'm not going to get in your truck to drive, a couple feet. So she didn't get in the truck, and then her dad looked up and saw her talking to him, and he like scrambled around and was like, oh, okay, never mind, I'm good, and then drove off. So later that night...
That's the biggest sign to me right there.
Well, later that night, she had left, but her sister and her brother-in-law stayed and camped overnight. And in the middle of the night, they're sitting by the fire, and they look over and they see him peer up from behind a tree.
Oh, shit.
And then, he moves behind another tree, and then he looks again and looks at them from behind another tree. And
This is why I don't go camping. You can't see stuff.
Her brother-in-law got really nervous, grabbed the pistol out of his truck, and they got so uncomfortable, they packed everything up and left. But it was this man who did this.
See, now that's the biggest one that makes him like he's this type of killer. All the other ones...
Really?
Yeah, I think that one is it.
That one? You don't think him being in Chicago, a whole other state across the country, he's in the same place at the same time working at the YMCA where this little 9-year-old girl was last seen, and he was the last person to see Christina White, and he was the last person in the Civic Center with Steve Pearsall and these two girls. I mean, it's crazy.
All right, you convinced me.
It's crazy.
He's guilty. You're right.
Well, a lot of people think he's guilty.
So now, first of all, if the families of the victims think it was him, why are they letting him slide?
Because there's no physical evidence.
Doesn't matter. I would take care of that myself. If you killed my daughter, I'm chopping you up. And I'll drop you off at the precinct in a bag like, hey, guys, I took care of this. I could go to jail now. It's okay.
I don't know. But the one thing I will say is there is a lot of mixed reviews and like a mixed bag of people who believe that he was involved in the dismemberment case. There was actually an FBI profiler who was on the Cold Valley documentary who came down and spoke with the detective, Jackie Nichols, and like went through the whole thing. And he's not totally convinced that this person of interest is involved in the dismemberment case because
that's a different type of
it's a
killing.
totally different thing. But the bodies...
That's why I was a little confused.
But the body of Christina
Me
White
and the FBI profiler think the same.
But the body of Christina White has still never been found. So how do we know what happened to her? The body of Steve Pearsall has never been found. So we don't know what happened to him either. So, but they say that the crime was different, and he wasn't the only link that he has to that girl, Kristen David, is Kristen David also volunteered at the Civic Center once in a while, but she wasn't as heavily involved, but he did know her from the Civic Center. So there's that one little link. But so some people believe he was involved in, he committed that crime as well, and some people believe that he didn't. So anyway, he moved out of Lewis Clark Valley and to North Carolina in 1999. He goes by the name Jeff Voss, like I said. I was a little uncomfortable and a little nervous about saying his name on the podcast. We do have some... But
it's in documentaries, right?
It is. It's in 2 documentaries, and one other podcast said his name, but then there's only been 2 podcasts that have covered this story, which I find fascinating.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like...
Well, now 3.
Now we're the 3rd. But one of the podcasts said his name and the other one didn't. And I chose to say his name because I feel like we have people who listen in North Carolina. And
yo, watch out for that dude and keep your kids away from him.
Well, any tips or any information at all that anybody listening in any state might have about any of these cases, you can contact Gloria Bobbert. She's the one who is the family member of Christina Nelson, and she has made it her life's work to solve these cold cases. She has a Facebook page called the Lewis Clark Valley Serial Killer, and you can message her on Facebook, and anything that you tell her stays confidential, and she forwards it straight to police.
That's dope that you don't give up on your family members that are missing,
I know.
That you
crazy.
Stay persistent.
But isn't this story nuts? Like, I know it kind of was jumbled and all over the place, but it's because there was just so many moving parts to it. But how crazy is it that these cases are still cold? So many people think this guy did it. There's a mound of circumstantial evidence, but no physical evidence to connect him. And since Stephen Pearsall is still missing, if you're in a courtroom and you're on a jury and you hear the Civic 3 case, the reasonable doubt is Stephen might have done it because his body has never been found. So you can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was this guy. And since we live in a country with double jeopardy, that's why they're afraid to charge him, because they can, if the jury, says no, he didn't do it, and then a year later, DNA comes out and it turns out he did do it, they can't charge him with it.
So what double jeopardy is, for some people that don't know, is if you go to court and they say you're innocent, they can't try you again for the same crime. Mm-hmm. See, but there should be like situations where you can. So say, for instance, now we found DNA, or hey, guess what? They said he was innocent, but we just got a videotape of him cutting her head off.
They can't. It doesn't matter. That's why double jeopardy.
But this is also stupid too, because all right now they don't want to try him because of double jeopardy. He's 79 years old.
72.
Yeah, it's 1979. I mixed up that he did
he's
stuff.
72.
All right, so he's 72. It's now or never.
I know. I don't know what they're going to do. In the end of the Cold Valley documentary came out in 2018, last year. And in the end of the documentary, Jackie Nichols, the detective for the Asotin Sheriff's Department, she made a bunch of binders, and the FBI has decided to take on these cases. And she forwarded all of her work to the FBI, and she's leaving it in the FBI's hands at this point. And they've decided to work these cold cases.
All right, well.
So we'll see what happens.
Hopefully some comes of it, and if he didn't do it, hopefully he's innocent. Like he doesn't go to jail.
He gets his name cleared.
Yeah, he gets his name cleared. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he probably did it. And if you see this dude, grab your kid's hand. And
It's crazy, right?
yeah.
Ugh. So you can check out definitely check out the documentary, because then you'll get a better idea. Like just seeing it, visually, you get a way better idea of the cases. It's called Cold Valley. It's on Hulu right now, but it originally aired on the ID channel. And then there's another one called Confluence. That one came out before Cold Valley, and that's a documentary called Confluence. And I watched it on Vimeo. You can just search for it on your browser, and it comes right up. But yeah, crazy. I find these cases crazy. Shout out to Gloria Bobbert. She runs like I said, she runs the Lewis Clark Valley serial killer Facebook page, and she's determined to solve these. So shout out to her for all of her hard work.
Word, keep it up. Don't quit, Gloria.
It's really cool. So anyway, that's my case for this week.
Pretty good. Good. I mean, he probably did it. So if you see him, lock him up. Get him. Book him, Dano. I don't know who Dano is and why we always say that. Book him, Dano. It's probably from a TV show.
Somebody will tell us. It's from somewhere.
Hey, who's Dano? Hashtag, where's Dano?
So thank you for listening, guys. Definitely check out our merch store and check out Wife of Crime Pod on Instagram and wifeofcrime.com, and go to our merch store and buy something cool.
Yeah, buy some stuff. There's a coffee cup and put whiskey in it.
All right, everyone. Have a good week. Bye.
Peace.